Howdy, howdy, howdy. It's Professor Victor Singing Eagle yet again with more awesome instances of indigenous intellectual education. And here we are at the foot of 4,321 centimeter tall Wakanuni Tukiwuki. That's what the natives here call it, or used to, the Shasta Indians. Wakanuni Tukiwuki, if we translate it into English, means it's so big, or a mountain so big that you have to take forever to walk around it. Now, I don't know if you guys can see this because this camera sucks, but this is the land that your crazy professor calls home. And this land, which now has a whole bunch of houses all around it, was always occupied. Over here, I don't know if you can see it. Again, our camera is awful. But if you look, you might be able to make out. I see that there's a mountain behind his face. There is the sleeping giant. There is his forehead, his nose, his lips, his chin, and behind the trees you could barely make out his beard. And then his chest rises up, and at the top of his chest you can see his little man nipple up there, man boobie, and then down. And over here is his foot, snow-capped peak. This area is ideal for human civilization. As one young, crazy Potawatomi Indian boy found out when he moved here. Long, long ago, there was only one house here. There was an old Potawatomi man who worked his butt off, saved up his money, and built a house. And he put it out here away from all the other people because he was from the city. He was from Los Angeles, and he was sick of rubbing elbows with neighbors. So he bought some land out here and put a house. And he brought his wife, his daughter, and his son. The little Indian boy is now in a land of isolation. But it wasn't always this way. And again, people are coming back. More people are building houses. But a long time ago, even long before, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, the Shasta people lived here and loved here and flourished here and committed their bodies to this sacred soil. Well, let me show you a little bit about this land, and I hope I don't mess this up because this camera is notoriously finicky, and I apologize for shaking the camera as I walk. After all, this is not a professional production we're doing here. This is just some crazy Indian dude telling a story to his Native American literature students. Here, lush green. There, deserty dry. What a cool contrast. And as a little Indian boy lived here, he realized that this earth, no matter how dry and barren, is sacred. How did he realize it? Well, that's what I'm here to tell you. A lot of these trees that are here were planted by the little Indian boy because he loves trees. Still does. I'm going to sit down because I keep wandering around and I'm just going to end up tripping and shattering my iPad. So let me find a place to sit down and I can tell this story. By the way, here's some as I'm preparing to sit. This is gooseberry bush here. This is some, I call it sweet sage or mountain sage, which I'm planting, and I want to, or not planting, but picking and taking home or taking back to South Dakota to share with my peeps, as we say in modern lingo. Now let me sit down and shut up and, well, not really shut up, but sit down and tell a story. Where's a nice big rock to sit on that's not in the sun? This'll work. This is beautiful. So, of course there's a car there, but that is too bad. This river is called the Shasta River. And this area, the newcomers call it the Banana Belt. What do they mean by that? A banana belt is a sliver of land that has relatively mild and calm temperature. Again, this is situated in the Banana Belt, a sliver of land which, relative to the land around it, has mild weather. Perfect for the natives who once lived here. Whereas it's snowing and windy and stormy all around the mountains everywhere, and this little valley here, it's nice and green and lush and warmer. So the Shasta people built villages all along this river. Big, teeming, bustling villages full of people. The water, which is now just a sliver of what it once used to be. This river used to be bigger and wider. It used to be teeming with life. Rainbow trout, salmon, turtles, crayfish, freshwater clam. And the beaver and raccoon used to come down here and do their thing, and the deer would come, rabbit and quail. And you could see all along the river there's blackberry bushes and gooseberry bushes growing. So the people, and here's some cattail, which is also edible, but we don't have time to talk about that right now. The newcomers came along, and of course they dammed up the river and rerouted it and kind of messed it up. You can also see that spring is still springing. Soon this whole area is going to be very, very green and lush, even much more so than it is now. It's just barely waking up and coming back to life. I see there's still freshwater clam. I don't know if you guys can see that. But in the water there are clamshells, probably harvested by the raccoon that still live in this area. Deer and raccoon are all we have left, and rabbits. The people are long gone. What happened to them? Well, that's kind of what this story is all about. Hope I can walk through this land carefully without shattering my iPad. Long, long time ago, he grabbed a shovel and he would dig holes and plant trees. And as he planted and as he dug, he kept encountering evidence of previous human activity. This is important. So the boy did some research and he realizes, yes, the Shasta Indians once lived in this area. And the more he dug and the more he walked around and combed the land, see that tan house there? That's the house that used to be the only house. And deer come along still and visit. But we don't have time to talk about that. We got to stay focused. The Indian boy would dig up arrowheads, manos and metates, and awls, that's A-W-L, an awl, made out of chert and obsidian and volcanic rock. That's for the manos and metates. If you don't know what that is, look it up. I'll give you a clue. It has something to do with grinding acorns to make acorn stew or acorn mush. I love that big tall tree. Wow, I bet that tree can tell some stories. Well, again, the boy found every single time he dug, every single time he walked around this, which was once empty land, he'd find arrowheads and other tools, and even beads, shell beads and bone beads, evidence of human activity. So, he theorized that this was once a big and quite bustling Shasta Indian village, or maybe even a town, or maybe you might call it a city. Again, this is in the banana belt. All around, all the other land is cold and windy, and over there, you probably saw it, it's kind of barren and dry, but as you get close to the river, it turns green and lush. So it's perfect. The deer come walking through, and they walk to the water to get sips. There's rabbit, raccoon, all kinds of critters, and blackberries and gooseberries. So it's perfect. So that means the Shasta could live here and thrive. That is, until the newcomers came along. By the way, you can see the little trees here. The crazy Indian is still a big fan of planting. And you can see that he has to put, wire mesh around the trees to keep the deer from nibbling the bark. There's one that the deer had attacked. You can see there with a bandage around it. Poor thing. But it'll grow out of it. There's a poor, sad-looking cedar tree. There's some giant sequoias over here. Now here's where we get to the tragic part. I gotta tell the story and keep it straight. And the tragedy of the Shasta people. I'll try to tell this story without overdoing it, as I am wont to do. And you can see that the trees are damaged and still trying to survive. But what happened is the gold rush, the 1849 gold rush, and the newcomers came in successive waves, just breaking against the shore of the humans, the natives that lived here before. And as they came and encroached on Indian land, they demanded more and more land and pushed the Indians out. And they scorned and looked down on the Indians. And when these miners came looking for their gold, they hunted the Indians for sport in their spare time. Yes, I said it. Yes, it's the truth. They hunted the Indians for sport. And in one final solution, as they might call it, of how to get rid of the Indians once and for all, they decided to invite them to a great big feast way over there in what's now called the Scotts Valley. I call it Strychnine Valley for reasons which you will understand in a minute. Strychnine Valley. Well, they invited all the Indians to this great feast with a barbecue, and lots of meat, and everybody spread out their blankets and they brought out the goodies, but they didn't tell the Indians that the meat was laced with strychnine. So the poor Shastas were hunted, they were killed off by disease, and a final insult They were poisoned with strychnine, which is pretty much rat poison. And whoever survived, they rounded up and marched at gunpoint to Oklahoma, what they used to call Indian Territory. There are still a few Shastas left, but nowhere near the numbers there used to be. And even to this day, as you walk around here and you're quiet and you listen, beyond the voices and the songs of the red-winged blackbirds and the little Pacific tree frogs and the bullfrogs and the rushing river, sometimes you can hear the spirits of the Shasta Indians crying out. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it. Thank you so much. By the way, as I prepare to end this little story, reminding you... Oh, I hear ducks too. I forgot there's ducks here. Neat. Reminding you that this story, there's a challenge question that comes along with it. Why would your crazy Indian professor who teaches Native American literature torture you with pictures of the land and stories about the land? What does the land have to do with Native literature? That's the question. Okay? Alrighty then. Thank you so much. You guys have an awesome rest of the week, and we'll talk later. Bye-bye.